My history with the Alien franchise goes all the way back to when I was 9 years old and my cousin took me to my local multiplex to see 1986 Aliens. It was the most extraordinary thing I'd ever seen in my life, and it's pretty much remained the same. I, for one, am in the camp that likes it a lot better than its predecessor, though both are masterpieces in their own right. The people that say Aliens is the action movie of the franchise and not a horror movie are just completely full of shit. The movie is terrifying, but 1 and 2 marked cultural and film milestones that will forever go down as some of the greatest films ever made. We got a bunch of real shit in the franchise since, none of it living up to the first 2 films, not even close.
Not even close, bud.
I've always lived in my own version of the franchise, as there's only 2 films, Alien and Aliens. After that, you can choose to accept those others as canon, or choose to believe they don't exist. There's moments in all of these that are interesting and fun, but the story wraps up perfectly in 1986's Aliens. So now we get to this, which is a movie placed between the first and second, I'm guessing to force us to accept it as canon. However, Romulus's plot and setup completely undermines the entire plot of Aliens and destroys Ripley's actions at the end of Alien. I'm not going to get into any spoilers, but I'll give some suggestive observations. I know that Weyland-Yutani is supposed to be greedy and an evil corporation, but this movie paints them as the fucking Star Wars evil empire. So I got some questions. Why is this extremely important space station just floating above the planet that our protagonists are on? Why has Weyland-Yutani not gone to investigate it? It's clearly a giant manufactured space station from Weyland-Yutani and it's been decommissioned and abandoned? But why? Why has no one else gone up to this thing? I'm a huge fan of Fede Alvarez. I thought Evil Dead 2013 was a pleasant surprise. I thought Don't Breathe was an extremely well-made follow-up with lots of tension and claustrophobia. However, this film just did not scare me at all. The closest I came to being scared was probably the main facehugger set piece, which is pretty cool. I felt there was a little disrespect thrown into this movie. There's a CGI deep fake character who has more than just a cameo role, where I initially thought, hey, this is pretty cool and interesting. But after sleeping on it, I realized it's just another pull from previous movies and bringing back a deceased actor for your own nostalgic moments. They really have to stop using the likeness of dead actors and putting them back in films. It's kind of gross. So yeah, this movie has so many plot holes that I can't even mention them all here. I do agree that the aesthetic and the environments are well realized with lots of practical effects and large practical sets. I also really appreciate that the technology is very much in the same world as the first Alien film, with lots of glowing buttons and bubble tube TV screens. I somewhat enjoyed the first 35 minutes. When watching a film with a 3-act structure that may or may not have a surprised 4th act, it's easy to see how a filmmaker can stick to landing or not. A great setup does not always guarantee a good midpoint, where our heroes are in trouble, and it certainly doesn't guarantee a good climax. Sometimes your setup could be boring, but the movie picks up in the 2nd act. This movie, as it moves from one act to another act, got significantly worse as it moved on, only to end at a 4th act, which is fucking utterly ridiculous and ruins any goodwill I had for this movie.
Fucking hell.
I think I liked one of the characters, and of course it was the android. Great actor, did a great job with that role. That's an ongoing trend with these later Alien franchise films. The android is the best part, the only one that we kind of give a shit about. As for the alien fodder, there's a dude who you can't understand a word he's fucking saying. Look, I appreciate a good Cockney accent like anyone else. They're the hillbillies of Britain. But at a certain point, it just sounds like a British sketch comedy show highlighting how no one can understand what the fuck someone's saying.
So instead of ow, which actually moves, this one goes ah and goes flat.
Something in the water! Something in the water! Something in the water! Something in the water!
There's something in the water!
What do you mean there's something in the water?
I don't know, there's just something in the fucking water!
And this character's an absolute asshole, so we don't care anyway. I have a hard time saying this out loud. I'm very sorry to inform you that the fully grown xenomorphs in this movie are a huge afterthought. They're not menacing, they're not scary, they're barely in the movie, and I don't mean because less is more. I mean they're just a small obstacle towards the end of the film that our heroes have to get past before they move on to another obstacle. I didn't like the shot selection of how they were shown. It's like the cinematographer and Alvarez couldn't decide if they wanted to show them in the darkness and shadows like an Alien, or show them in numbers like Aliens, but at the end of the day, these fully sized warrior xenomorphs were just not scary. How does that even happen? Look, I hate to slap labels on movies. I like to think of myself as a better critic than that, especially labels as cliched as this. But to summarize this movie, I feel like it's a very expensive, well-produced fan film. For instance, even some of the props just don't feel real. James Cameron and Alien specifically made the pulse rifles heavy so that when someone picked it up, you can see how heavy it is and how hard it is for them to hold. This Model 1 pulse rifle that Rain is carrying in this film looks and feels like a piece of styrofoam painted. She's flinging that fucking thing around like it's weightless. That takes you right out of the movie. Our character's plan is just so ridiculous. There's so many things that have to work out perfectly without them even knowing if it's possible. Their main key to getting in and through the space station, they are not even sure will work at all. I guess the reason they cast a bunch of young Gen Zers is to skate through the fact that they're all a bunch of idiots. I'm not sold for 1 second in this movie that this group of people would be the first and only ones to discover the abandoned space station literally right above the planet that Weyland-Yutani has mining colonies on. For some reason, the movie feels like not only did they not want to do anything different, but they also wanted Alvarez to inject so many reminders and Easter eggs from previous films. Hence why it feels like a fan film. Hey, remember when Ripley climbed down a ladder and we saw her white Reebok shoes? Our protagonist is doing the same thing here with the same shoes. Hey, remember when Ripley said, "Get away from her, you bitch"? Well, I'll just leave that one there. My favorite thing about the film is probably the production design, the spacecrafts, the corridors, some of the set pieces, and as mentioned, some of the retro technology. The Benjamin Wallfisch score is fantastic. It has small elements of previous Alien movies, but definitely is its own thing, and I really appreciated the score. Unfortunately, other than that and a couple of early tense moments, this movie just does not work for me, and I'm really sorry to say that. Even if I like the first 2 or 3 acts, it definitely goes out of its way to make sure I fucking hate the 4th act. I can't imagine anyone liking that act, but I'm sure there are many, considering most people seem to be eating this movie shit. I'm happy for those who enjoyed it. I was with people who enjoyed it. I guess I just expected more from this director, and I had high hopes. I know I'm destroying this movie, but you have to understand, I'm just a boy searching for another good Alien movie who just keeps getting disappointed time and time again. When I first heard about this movie going into production, I immediately thought happy thoughts. I figured I could will it into brilliance. Unfortunately, my willpower ceased to exist. At least when it comes to Alien films after 1986. We drink your cinema.
I wanna snap your neck and spit on